So hello guys, our today's topic is the epithelium. Actually, the human body it is made up of four type of tissues. What are those? They are the epithelial cells, connective tissue, muscle tissue, and the nervous tissue. What are the four primary types of tissue? They are the epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscular tissue, and the nervous tissue. The epithelial tissue, so this type of tissue it will cover the line and the surface of the body, including the skin and the internal organ. The connective tissue, this type of tissue will provide support and structure to the body. It includes variety of structures like bone, cartilage, tendons, ligaments, and the blood vessels. The third is the muscle tissue. This type of tissue is responsible for movement like the skeleton, smooth muscles, and the cardiac muscle. The fourth is the nervous tissue. It includes the brain, spinal cord, and peripheral nerves. So today we shall be discussing about the epithelial tissue that lines the body surface and the body cavity. The epithelium it is a type of tissue that will cover the surface of organs, lines the body cavity, and it forms the gland. So what are the key characteristics of epithelium? Number one is the cellularity. The epithelial tissue it is composed of closely packed cells. The cells they are closely packed together with little to no extracellular matrix present between them. Second, attachment. The epithelial cells they are attached to the basement membrane. So the basement membrane it will provide the support and help to anchor the tissue to the underlying connective tissue. Other important thing is the epithelial tissue it is not vascularized. The epithelial tissue it is not vascularized. It means that it lacks blood vessels. The epithelial tissue lacks blood vessels. The nutrients and oxygen it diffuses into the tissue from the nearby blood vessels in the underlying connective tissue. The epithelial cells they have high rate of turnover and they are constantly being replaced. So they have ability to regenerate quickly when they are damaged or lost. These epithelial cells then they can be specialized to form special function. What are those functions? They are the secretion, absorption, and the protection. So we classify epithelial tissue based upon its shape, that is squamous, cuboidal, or columnar, or number of the cell layer, either simple or stratified. So classification it could be simple. The example are simple, that could be squamous, cuboidal, or columnar, or it could be pseudo-stratified or stratified. That could be squamous non-keratinized, squamous keratinized, cuboidal, columnar, or transitional. The term simple means when it is one cell layer thick. The term stratified means when it has two or more cells. The term squamous that stands for when the width of cell it is greater than its height. The cuboidal term means when the width, depth, and the height they are approximately the same, while the columnar is the height of the cell that exceed the width. So let us discuss the various types. The first comes the simple squamous epithelium. The simple squamous epithelium it is also known as pavement epithelium. Why simple squamous epithelium is known as pavement epithelium? Because it is a single layer thin flattened cells. So it consists of single layer of thin flat cells that resemble scales. So these cells they are tightly packed together and they have a flattened shape that give a tissue a smooth flat appearance like pavement. Now, where is the simple squamous epithelium found? It is found in the lining of blood vessels, the lining of lungs, and the lining of body cavities. So, what is the function of simple squamous epithelium? Since it is simple, that means it is made up of single layer. The term squamous means when the width of cell it is greater than its height. So the cell's width here is greater than the height. So since it is thin, so it allows the diffusion of substance like the oxygen and carbon dioxide across the membrane, as well as it helps in the filtration and excretion of various substances. However, the protection it is not the primary function. Why? Because the lining of body cavity is, since it is very thin, so it will not provide, since it is very thin, so it will not provide protection. However, it will allow the diffusion of substance like oxygen and carbon dioxide across the membrane. So that is why its function is simple diffusion. The thinness of the tissue that allows for efficient exchange of gases, nutrients across the membrane. So what are the histological features of squamous cell epithelium? The cells are flat and thin with the central located nucleus. The cells are arranged in single layer and they are packed together. The boundaries between adjacent cell, they are not visible under microscope due to their thinness of the cell and their close packing. The basement membrane, it is attached to the basement membrane, that is thin layer of extracellular matrix that will separate the epithelium from the underlying connecting tissue. The simple squamous epithelium is avascular, means it does not contain blood vessels. The nutrients and the oxygen they diffuse into tissue from the nearby blood vessels in underlying connecting tissue. So the simple squamous epithelium, it is a tissue that is composed of single layer of cells, flat scale-like cells. It consists of the cells that are flat and they are scale-like. The cells they are wider than they are tall, that give them a width greater than their height. So this type of tissue it is found in the lining surface involved in the exchange of gases or fluid, such as the alveoli of lungs or the endothelium lining the blood vessels. So the flat shape of the cells they allow for efficient diffusion of the molecules across the tissue. Other important thing is the simple squamous epithelium, it is thin and it is not very protective, as it is primarily designed for diffusion rather than providing the physical protection. The next is the simple cuboidal epithelium. So simple means it is made up of single layer of cells, and cuboidal means the width, depth and the height they are approximately equal. That is why that gives a shape of cuboidal shape. So this type of tissue it is found in the lining of small tubules and duct within the organs, such as the kidney tubules, or the ducts of the salivary glands, ducts of the exocrine glands, or the thyroid follicles. So the cells they are cuboidal shape that allow for the efficient secretion and absorption of molecule, while the single layer it acts as a barrier between the two sides of the tissue. Remember, the simple cuboidal epithelium it is not as thin as the simple squamous epithelium. So the primary function is to facilitate the transport of molecules across the tissue and to maintain the proper organ function. So these are the cells of the simple cuboidal epithelium. You can see that the cell's height, width and depth, they are equal in size. Next is the simple columnar epithelium. So it consists of single layer of column cells. The height of these cells is greater than their width, so that give them a tall and narrow appearance. The cells are taller and appear columnar in section at right angle to the basement membrane. The nuclei, they are elongated and may be located toward the base, or occasionally the apex of toward the base, the center, or occasionally toward the apex of the cytoplasm, that is known as the polity. So the simple columnar epithelium, it is found in the lining surface of organs involved in excretion and absorption, like lining of stomach or the intestine. So the tall and narrow shape of the cells will allow for increased surface area, and there will be efficient absorption or excretion of molecules across the tissue. The simple columnar ciliated epithelium. So there is presence of surface specializations that are cilia. They are the finger-like projections of the plasma membrane. So they are found in the female reproductive tract. Or this type of epithelium is found in the lining the respiratory tract, including the trachea and bronchi. So what will be the function of cilia here? The cilia helps to move the mucus and trapped particles out of the airway. So the cilia will beat in a coordinated waves, moving the mucus particles toward the throat, where they can be coughed up or swallowed. It is also found in the female reproductive tract, where the cilia, it helps to move the ovum toward the fallopian tube, toward the uterus. So the cilia will create a current that moves the egg along, increasing the chances of fertilization. What are goblet cells? The goblet cells, they are the type of the cells found in the epithelial tissue that secrete mucus. So remember, for your exam point of view, that the goblet cells secrete mucus. The goblet cells secrete mucus. They are found in the lining of various organs, including the respiratory and digestive tract, as well as the conjunctiva of eye. So these cells are goblet in appearance, that is wider at base and more narrower at the tip. So the bottom of the cells, it is filled with mucin granules. So when they are stimulated, the granules are released. So the mucin granules, they mix with the water to form mucus that can help to protect and lubricate the lining of organ. So what is the importance of these goblet cells? The goblet cells, they are important for maintaining the health of various organs, as the mucus they produce help to trap and remove the foreign particles such as bacteria or the dust from the body. Also, they can help to prevent the damage to the lining of organ from substance like acid that is present in the stomach or the inhaled pollutants. So these are the goblet cells. The next is the pseudostratified columnar epithelium. The pseudostratified columnar epithelium, it is a type of tissue that appears to be made up of multiple layers of cells, but actually it is composed of single layer of columnar shaped cells. So these cells they vary in height with some reaching the surface and other giving the tissue a layered or stratified appearance. So, very important for your exam point of view, where the pseudostratified columnar epithelium is found. It is found in the respiratory tract, including the nasal cavity, trachea, and bronchi. So here the tissue it is ciliated with hair-like projections that helps to move the mucus and trapped particles out of airway. Here also the pseudostratified columnar epithelium will contain goblet cells that will secrete mucus. So the function of pseudostratified columnar epithelium is the movement and transport of materials along the tissue that make it important for the proper functioning of respiratory system. The next comes the stratified squamous epithelium. The stratified squamous epithelium it is a type of tissue that is composed of multiple layers of flattened cells. So this tissue is found in area of the body that are subjected to abrasion or mechanical stress like the skin, mouth, esophagus. The cells in the outermost layer they are flattened and dead and they flow off and they are generally removed and replaced by cells from the deeper layer. So the cells that are present in the deeper layer they are actively dividing and produce new cells that migrate toward the surface and cause differentiate into flattened dead cells of the outer layer. So what is the function of this stratified squamous epithelium? It forms a protective barrier against the physical, chemical and biological stress. So the keratinized form of this tissue, it is found in skin that produces a tough waterproof barrier. So that will help to prevent the entry of pathogens and loss of fluid from the body. So two types, one is the keratinized form and other is the non-keratinized form. Where the non-keratinized form of tissue is found? It is found in the mouth and the esophagus. So that will produce a barrier that will protect the underlying tissue from the damage like the mechanical abrasion or the chemical damage. So the stratified squamous epithelium it can be classified into two types. The base of or the presence of keratin or absence of keratin, that can be keratinized or non-keratinized. The keratinized stratified squamous epithelium will be found on the skin and it is composed of multiple layers of flattened dead cells that are filled with keratin. The outermost layer of tissue it is known as stratum corneum that will provide a barrier and protect the underlying tissue. So it has a keratin in the cells of stratum corneum. So that gives the tissue a tough fibrous texture. Whereas the non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium, they are found in the area of body that are moist and subject to abrasion like the lining of mouth, throat, esophagus, anus, etc. So the cells in the non-keratinized epithelium they are alive and they retain their nuclei. And the outer layer of cells it is moist and flexible rather than the tough or fibrous. So the keratinized epithelium it is tough and protective, whereas the non-keratinized epithelium it is flexible and it allows for the exchange of the materials. Other is the stratified squamous cuboidal epithelium that is made up of multiple layers of cuboidal cells in the basal layer and the glands such as sweat glands, mammary glands. The cells in the basal layer, they are actively dividing and produce new cells that migrate toward the surface and differentiate into flattened cells of outer layer. So what is the function of stratified squamous cuboidal epithelium? To provide both protection and transport in the glandular and ductal tissue. So what is stratified columnar epithelium? It is the type of epithelial tissue that consists of multiple layers of cells. The top layer made up of tall column-shaped cells. So this type of epithelium, it is found in area of body that need protection against physical and chemical damage like digestive tract, respiratory tract, etc. Similarly, the cells in stratified columnar epithelium, they can be ciliated or non-ciliated. Non-ciliated will not have cilia, while the ciliated will have. Other is the transitional epithelium. So it is a specialized type of tissue found in the urinary system, especially in the lining of bladder, ureter, and the urethra. It is known as urothelium. So this type of epithelium, it has ability to stretch and expand in response to volume of urine that is present in the bladder. So allowing it to accommodate a varying volume of urine without any rupture. The cells of the transitional epithelium, they can change depending upon the degree of stretch or relaxation of tissue. So when the bladder it is empty, the cells are rounded or cuboidal shape. As the bladder fills with urine, the cells stretch and become flattened, allowing the tissue to expand. So what is the function of transitional epithelium? Number 1, stretching and expansion. It is capable of stretching and expansion, allowing the bladder to accommodate varying volume of urine without the rupture. Second is barrier protection. The tissue will provide a barrier between urine and underlying tissue, preventing the leakage of urine into the surrounding tissue. Third, it secretes mucin, that a protein that helps to lubricate and protect the tissue. Other important term is the cell polarity. What do you mean by cell polarity? That refers to the asymmetrical organization of the cellular structures and the organelles within a cell. So there are 3 domains of the cell polarity. The apical domain, the lateral domain, and the basal domain. The apical domain, it is the top or the surface of cell that faces the outside environment. So in the epithelial cells, so this domain is specialized for functions such as secretion, absorption, and sensing. So it is rich in ion channels, carrier protein, and hydrolytic enzymes. Other is the lateral domain. The lateral domain refers to the side of the cell that make contact with the adjacent cells. So this domain contains structure like tight junction, adherence junction, desmosomes that helps to maintain the integrity and barrier function of the epithelial cells. The third is the basal, that is the bottom of the cell that contains the extracellular matrix or the basement membrane. So that is important for holding the cell to the surrounding tissue and regulating the cell signal and the metabolism. Now, what are the membrane specialization of the epithelia? The various specialization, they are: number 1, the intercellular spaces. So the intercellular junction, they refer to the spaces or gap between the adjacent cells in a tissue. In the epithelial tissue, these are known as the intercellular junction. So the intercellular surface, it is important for cell-to-cell communication, transport of the molecules between the cells, and maintaining the integrity of the tissue. So the various types of the intercellular junctions, they are: number 1, the tight junctions. So the tight junctions, They are the specialized region of the lateral domain that seals the space between the adjacent cells, and they prevent the diffusion of molecules between the cells. So the tight junctions, they are important for maintaining the integrity and barrier function of the epithelial cell. So remember, the tight junctions, they are also known as zona occludens. They are the specialized junction that forms the barrier between the cells, prevent molecules and ions from passing through the intercellular space. So these tight junctions, they are composed of transmembrane proteins like occludin and claudin. So these interact with the cytoplasmic adapter protein that forms a complex that regulate the permeability of tight junction and helps to maintain the barrier function. The function of these are to seal the adjacent cell together. They are involved in cell signaling. They define the apical and basolateral domain of the plasma membrane. Other are the adhering junctions. The adherent junction, they are located in the lateral domain part, and they provide the mechanical strength to the epithelial tissue. They are composed of transmembrane protein known as cadherin that binds to cadherin on the adjacent cells. What are the cell-to-cell adhesive junctions? They include the transmembrane protein like cadherin. So the cadherin, they are the family of the transmembrane protein that play a role in cell adhesion. Other are the cytoplasmic adapter protein. What are the cytoplasmic adapter protein? So the cytoplasmic adapter proteins, they are group of protein that are involved in mediating protein interaction within the cytoplasm of the cell. So they play an important role in cell adhesion. Other are the zona adherents. Zona adherents are known as adherent junction. They are the specialized structure that form the belt-like structure around the apical end of the epithelial cells. They are composed of transmembrane protein E-cadherin that interact with E-cadherin molecule on the adjacent cell to form a strong calcium-dependent bond. The macula adherents, they are also known as desmosomes. They are the type of cell junction that are found in the epithelial cells. So it is a specialized structure that help to connect the adjacent cells together, forming a strong bond between them. So desmosomes, they consist of two main components. One is the transmembrane glycoprotein cadherin and other is the intracellular plaque. The cadherin molecule extend from the plasma membrane of the one cell and interact with the cadherin molecule from the adjacent cell, forming a strong calcium-dependent bond between the two cells. The intracellular plaque, it is made up of protein like desmoplakin, placoglobin that encourage the cadherin molecules to the filament of the cell cytoskeleton. The focal adhesion and hemidesmosomes, they are example of cell matrix junction. The focal adhesion, they are the specialized structure that link the actin cytoskeleton of the cell to the extracellular matrix. So they will consist of transmembrane integrin protein that binds to the extracellular protein like fibronectin and collagen. Hemidesmosomes anchor epithelial cells to the extracellular matrix in similar manner as compared to the focal adhesion, but they interact with intermediate filament rather than the actin filament. So hemidesmosomes, they will contain transmembrane integrin that will bind to the extracellular protein such as laminin and intracellular protein. Other are the gap junctions. So gap junction, they are the specialized intercellular junction that allows the direct communication between the adjacent cells. They are formed by two hemichannels or by the connection. So each connection is made up of 6 connection protein that are arranged in a ring-like structure. So these gap junction allow the small molecules like the calcium to pass directly from one cell to other. So the gap junction, they are seen in various different cell types like the cardiac muscle, smooth muscle, and the neurons. The luminal surface of the epithelial cells, they contain 3 types of specialization. They are the cilia, microvilli, and the stereocilia. The luminal surface, remember, it refers to surface that faces the lumen. So the surface that faces the lumen or the inner cavity of the tubular structure like the digestive tract or the respiratory tract. Cilia, they are the small hair-like projections from the surface of some cells. They are composed of microtubules. They generate fluid flow or the motion of the cells, so they can move in a coordinated fashion, generating a fluid flow. Whereas microvilli, they are tiny finger-like projections. They are seen in cells, those cells that are involved in absorption, like the intestine. They increases the surface area and help to increase the efficiency of absorption of the nutrient. The third, stereocilia, they are the non-motile projections. They are seen in inner ear and epididymal cells in the male reproductive system. They increase the surface area. Now let us discuss the layers of the basement membrane. Lamina densa, lamina lucida, and lamina reticularis, they are the term used to describe the layer of the basement membrane. So the first layer is the lamina densa. It is the layer of the basement membrane that is closest to cell. It is composed of collagen, type 4, laminin, and other glycoproteins. So it will provide the structural support to the cell. Second, lamina lucida layer. It is a thin layer that separates the lamina densa from the overlying cells. It contains laminin, nidogene, and other proteins, and it is important for cell adhesion and signaling. The third is the lamina reticularis. It is the deepest layer of the basement membrane located beneath the lamina densa. It is composed of collagen type 3 and other glycoprotein. So the lamina densa, lamina lucida, lamina reticularis, they all form the basement membrane. So that play important role in maintaining tissue structure and function. So what is the difference between the basal lamina and the basement membrane? You should know. The basement membrane is used to describe the extracellular matrix structure that underlies both the epithelial and the endothelial cells. Whereas the basal lamina, it is used to describe the extracellular matrix that underlie the epithelial cells. So the basement membrane, it is a more general term that include both the basal lamina and the underlying connective tissue, that is also known as reticular lamina. So the basal lamina, it is without the connective tissue, as it is a separate layer that lies between the epithelial or the endothelial cells and the underlying reticular lamina. So the basal lamina and the reticular lamina together form the basement membrane. So let us discuss the various glands in the human body. The exocrine gland, these glands secrete their product into the duct that leads to the surface of body or into the body cavity. So example are the sweat glands, salivary glands, or the digestive glands. The endocrine glands, they will secrete their products directly into the bloodstream. They are also known as hormones. So the hormone, they act as a chemical messenger that travel to target organ or tissue to regulate various physiological processes. Example is the thyroid gland, pituitary gland, adrenal gland. The third are the apocrine gland. They are type of sweat glands that are found in the armpit, groin and nipples. So they excrete a milky fluid composed of protein, fat and cellular debris. The fourth is the holocrine gland. These glands excrete their product by rupturing and releasing entire cells. Example of holocrine glands include the sebaceous gland that excretes oil into the skin. The other are the merocrine glands. So these excrete their products through exocytosis, that is the process of releasing the content of vesicle outside the cells. So the example of merocrine glands will include the pancreas that excrete the digestive enzymes into the small intestine and the lacrimal glands that produces tear to keep the water lubricated. The next is the epithelial cells renewal, the stratified squamous of epithelium of the skin. It is replaced in approximate 28 days. So the cells of the stratum basal, they undergo mitosis to provide for cell renewal. Epithelial metaplasia, it is a reversible conversion of one mature epithelial cells to another mature epithelial cell type. It is seen as a response to stress, chronic inflammation, or other abnormal stimuli. A tumor arises from the epithelia. A tumor, it can arise from any tissue. If it arises from epithelia, it is known as carcinoma. If it is arise from the squamous epithelium, it is squamous cell carcinoma. If it arises from the glandular epithelium, it is adenoma. The diagnosis that can be made through immunohistochemical technique. Now, what is the turnover of epithelium? So remember this for your exam point of view. The skin, the turnover time is the time taken for the cell to divide and pass through the entire epithelium. For skin, it is 52 to 75 days. Remember, for the gingiva, it is 41 to 57 days. For cheek, it is 25 days. The non-keratinized buccal epithelium turnover is faster than the keratinized gingival epithelium.